Hey guys, how you doing today? This is Keith with Spreadsheet Sports. I've got a couple things I want to touch on um, that were in the article and a couple things that were not in the article today. So we obviously have another Coors Field series upon us, and tonight it is the Diamondbacks versus the Rockies. That total right now, because of the pitchers on the mound, is at an 11. This is about as high as you're ever going to see a game unless there's for unforeseen circumstances, it could creep up to 11 and a half to 12. Watch that line because that means that a lot of players and a lot of people in your tournaments and cash games tonight are actually going to be on and taking hitters from that game. Okay. A couple things I want to touch on is how to be different when you approach tournaments and GPP lineups. You hear all the time about somebody being contrarian, finding value, differentiating yourself from the field. And there are a lot of ways to do this. One of the big things is that you can punt a position that normally people pay up for. Catcher is a position that a lot of people punt. First base is a position that a lot of people end up paying up for, whether it be all the way up at the top at Miguel Cabrera usually, or whether it goes all the way down to the bottom with a guy like Justin Smoke or not Paul Goldschmidt. Adam LaRoche. So there are different ways to do it. Me personally, I don't like to play players that suck. I heard this from a guy that is a really, really good DFS mind, and he basically says he doesn't play players that suck, which is an absolute good thing. It does you no good to punt a position if you're not going to get anything out of that position, or if there's not a good chance that you're going to get anything out of that position. I would rather pay up for a guy that I know I can get production out of and possibly get even more production out of than I would to pay down just to differentiate myself and hopefully get something that nobody else is thinking of. You can find value at every position, but the biggest key is where do you want to pick your spots in order to make sure that you have the best chance to put up that winning lineup. That's the big key. Is you don't have to have a lineup full of 5 and 6 and 7% owned players in order to take down a GPP. You can have a couple what we call chalk players in there that are 30, 40, 50% owned, as long as you still get the production out of them and you get production out of your players that are 2% owned, 3% owned, 4% owned. If the right mix and match can actually do good, as long as you have you've been able to separate yourself from the field in ways that most people usually don't. One way I like to do this is paying up for pitcher. I don't always do that. I usually tend to go middle tier depending on the price. And usually the reason is because depending on what the feel is around the industry that day, you could have one of those higher price pitchers, one of those aces going that is going to be 30, 40, 50% owned in your cash games and 40% owned in your GPPs. A good example was Michael Pineda last night. He wasn't the highest price pitcher on the board. He's a borderline ace. He was going against the Phillies. He was a heavy Vegas favorite. He was going to be the highest owned pitcher on the night. In cash games, double ups, head to heads, he was owned all across the board. In double ups, he was over 70% owned. So when he got -5 points or was negative points, it didn't hurt you as bad if you had him in your lineup. I had him in all my cash games. My head to heads, I still put up 50 points with him getting me a -5 on draft or on FanDuel. So it doesn't hurt you quite as much in cash games as it would in GPPs. Now, if he would have gone off for 25 points in GPPs, then you're looking at that 25 points, but you're only looking about getting an edge over 30% of the field. So what I ended up doing last night was I took Clayton Kershaw and got him at 6% owned and catapulted myself up the leaderboards because of that. He didn't have a great night, but obviously if he would have just finished the night and gone out and struck out 3 batters in the first inning and had an injury and come out, he still would have done better than Michael Pineda. So he didn't get the win. He got hurt a little bit, but it ended up separating myself, and that was for paying up. I paid, I think it was $13,000 or $1,300 more, and I ended up getting it at a far, far, far lower ownership percentage because at any given time, Clayton Kershaw can go out and he can outperform Michael Pineda, even going against the Phillies when Pineda is actually doing well. So we've got a couple situations like that tonight. The first one I'm going to let you know about is Madison Bumgarner. He's playing the Padres, who are known to be able to hit lefties better than righties, but they still strike out a lot. They're in Petco, and they do not string hits together. The only thing I'm worried about, like I said in my article, is Mad Bum getting touched up for 1 or 2 home runs. He that could hurt you a little bit. But I don't think there's going to be any runners on base, and I don't think he's going to get touched up for 5 runs in 5 innings. And he's a huge Vegas favorite. So I'm going to pay up tonight for Madison Bumgarner in some of my GPPs to be able to get that differential or that separation from the field because of the mid-tier prices being very, very higher owned because of the fact that we have Coors Field in play tonight. So that's something that you kind of got to take into in consideration when you're doing this is what are all the situations surrounding the reason why players are on this X player or Y player. So that's one of the things I take into consideration. So another person I'm going to go back to the same well in Wrigley Field is going to be Zach Greinke. He's on the higher end of that middle tier, but after what the Cubs did to Clayton Kershaw last night, I don't think that a lot of people are going to be on Greinke because obviously he's not Kershaw and the Cubs are boom or bust. He will be higher owned than Kershaw. I'm projecting probably right now around 10 to 12% owned in your bigger GPPs like the Rally tonight on FanDuel or the Moonshot tonight on DraftKings. He might be upwards and close to 16 to 17% owned. But that is still a situation that you're paying up for in order to gain an advantage and an edge on the field. So that's something that you always got to look at is what is the industry going to react upon from the previous night, and how can you use that and take that and capitalize on that? So some of the bigger, more popular pitchers tonight are going to be Danny Salazar, Chris Archer going against the Blue Jays. Salazar obviously is going against the Tigers, and Carlos Martinez going against the Marlins. So you take that and kind of make sure that you might want to sprinkle some people in there in order to kind of get an advantage. Maybe throw a Giancarlo Stanton in one of your lineups. Maybe throw a Miggy Cabrera or a Yoenis Cespedes or JD Martinez or even Victor Martinez. A Detroit Tigers stack is something that I will be doing in a couple GPPs just because of the ability for Salazar to blow up. We haven't seen it in a while, and I'm not predicting that it's going to happen tonight. But I can see it happening tonight. It's going to happen against a team like the Tigers, who can hit just pretty much anybody. So some of your lower owned guys tonight, as far as pitchers, are going to be. Let's see here. Strasburg is going to be lower owned just because he's coming off of an injury. Alex Gonzalez, because he doesn't do a lot. He doesn't strike out a lot of batters, and everybody's expecting this guy to regress and get at and blow up one of these games. So that's something that I take into consideration too. What is the guy done and what do his underlying statistics say that are going to happen. I really pour into those numbers, and I cheat in our models in order to kind of project that as well. So another guy that I have absolutely loved playing all year long, and it's going back to that Cubs-Dodgers game, is going to be Jason Hamill. His home road splits are absolutely absurd. He does a heck of a lot better on the road. And if people look towards that, people hate playing pitchers against the Dodgers, especially right-handed pitchers, because they kill them. So I'm going to take that thought, and I'm going to capitalize off the chaos tonight. Kings play just because of the fact that he's not a guarantee for the win. This is pretty much an even slide tonight. You're looking at a pick 'em. Greinke was a slight favorite the last time I checked at -114, but Hamill is very good. He can rack up the strikeouts. He might allow a couple runs, but as I'll talk about in a couple days, I always project my hitters to start off with at least -2 points. As far as on FanDuel, just because of the fact that I don't ever expect my pitchers to pitch a shutout. So I always start off at -2, and then I project from there. So he's going to get you 6-7 innings. He's probably going to record about 5-6 strikeouts. He might allow 1 or 2 runs. And if the Cubs do get to Greinke, he's going to be in line for the win. So the Cubs bullpen was very, very good last night. They only allowed 1 run to Los Angeles, and the Dodgers actually have done a lot better at home than they have on the road this year. So that's something that you've got to take into consideration as well. So as far as some of your hitters, I normally don't hit too much on the Coors games. We all know that Coors Field is a great hitter's environment, and we all know that everybody gets a positive park shift when going there. But with the way that sites are actually start these Coors Field hitters, it's a way to kind of separate yourself and be contrarian. One person I am absolutely going to in about 95% of my lineups is going to be Paul Goldschmidt. You can normally get him even when he was at $54, $56, $57, $100. You can get him at under 6-7% owned most nights. He's now $6,100 on FanDuel. He's $6,000 on DraftKings. So you are going to be able to get him at a lower percentage own because people are going to look elsewhere so they can afford either the higher priced pitching or more Coors bats than just 1 or 2. And that is something that I always know, because as a Rockies fan, I know Paul Goldschmidt owns the Rockies. It doesn't matter if it's here or if it's across the world. If it doesn't matter if it's in my backyard or yours, he is absolutely the Rockies, whether it be in Chase Field or Coors Field. So he is a hands down, the rest of the series, going to be one of my top plays at first base each and every single night. So another player that I'm looking for, or I'm looking to in a different game, is going to be Brian McCann. Brian McCann, obviously, they're facing the Phillies, and the Phillies don't have good pitching unless it's Cole Hamels. He's going to use that short porch, and he could have 2 home runs. Okay. Another player that I'm going to look for in that same game, and the reason is let me go back to Brian McCann real quick. A lot of players, they're actually going to punt. They punt catcher just because it's not a premium position. You can normally find value there. You find a catcher that's hitting in the top 4 or 5 in the lineup, even sometimes 6 depending on the night, and they just plug away and hope for the best. Pay up for Brian McCann tonight unless you are playing one of the Coors Field catchers. Just make it real simple and easy. Find your value elsewhere. You'll be able to plug in a higher price pitcher. You'll be able to plug in Paul Goldschmidt and get a couple mid-tier bats along the way that end up opening up as lineups get released. So in that same game, I'm going to turn to Maikel Franco. He absolutely just kills left-handed pitching. He hit 2 home runs last night, and he is absolutely on fire right now. Put him as part of a Philly stack, play him alone. Not a lot of people are going to be picking on him, even though I know they should, because I'm going to be stacking against CC Sabathia tonight. He's a minus 230 plus favorite, but the problem is that he is not good. He is not the same pitcher that he used to be. The Phillies are getting on a little bit of a roll. Yes, I know they're the Phillies, but you have to capitalize on recency, okay? A lot of players, they look to Vegas and they're going to plug them in. I expect CC to actually be one of the higher owned pitchers of the night on FanDuel just because of the fact that he could get the win. But we saw it last night with Pineda. People are they're gonna look over the Phillies because they are the Phillies. Plug in Maikel Franco, get some other value bats in there from the Phillies, probably the bottom part of that order, and let them produce. Okay, so another I'm going to be turning to is going to be David Ortiz. They're playing the Baltimore Orioles and Ubaldo Jimenez. I can see this matchup going either way, but over the course of their history together, Boston has hit Ubaldo. Ubaldo had a good game sprinkled in here or there, but especially David Ortiz, Dustin Pedroia, they know how to hit Ubaldo. You can go back to the 2007 World Series against the Rockies. You can take it with his time with the Indians. You can take it with the Orioles. Ubaldo Jimenez struggles in Fenway Park. It's just one of those things. You can also look towards the Astros and the Angels. I like the Astros right-handed bats tonight. That's a nice stack in some of the later games to be able to push you up the leaderboards a little bit late. Something that if you notice a trend in GPPs is a lot of the Eastern time zone parks are more hitters parks than the Western time zone parks, which are generally more pitcher parks. So a lot of players, they'll stack the East Coast games, they'll kind of sprinkle in some Central games, and then they'll load up on pitching on the West Coast, okay, depending on who's playing where and the matchups and everything like that. Take that to your advantage sometimes. If there's a good pitching matchup on the East Coast, take the matchup on the East Coast, sprinkle in some East Coast bats, but stack up on the offense on those that are in very, very good situations. Generally, it's going to be in either Arizona, the Dodgers playing somebody like the Phillies, or the Astros playing CJ Wilson and the Angels. Stack the right-handed bats. George Springer is in a great position. Carlos Correa is in a great position. I even don't mind Chris Carter, Evan Gattis. They have that lineup top to bottom has the ability to put the ball out of the ballpark and put up a bunch of runs in a hurry. We saw that we've seen that from them all year long. Now, don't be surprised if they go out and they strike out 16 times against the Angels and a mediocre bullpen, because they do strike out greater than 25% of the time. So that is something that you kind of can take and use to your advantage. They're always boom or bust in GPPs. I always try to take one or two players from the Astros that are in good spots and throw in an Astro stack in a couple of my lineups as far as GPPs are concerned. As far as cash games, I stick to what is the most consistent. That is the biggest way to make sure that you have a profitable outcome over the long term in your cash games. Use your cash game and your success in head-to-heads and double-ups in the 20-man leagues, the 10-man leagues, even the 15-man leagues, to take that profit and boost it into your GPPs where you can cap off of chaos and end up making a huge ROI. Guys, I appreciate everything that you guys have said to me so far. I enjoyed bringing this. I hope you guys have enjoyed it just as much as I have. As always, you can as well leave a comment in the Google Plus section. And don't forget, we've got a couple more slots available in our 15-man league for Spreadsheet Sports today on FanDuel. I'm going to try to keep this going every single day. As long as we keep filling the 15-man, I'll put it up to 20. And depending on how it goes, I'd like some feedback on how we're doing it, and then we can go from there. So Guys, I appreciate everything. Appreciate all of you guys taking the time to read the article and leave some feedback and actually view the video. So for Spreadsheet Sports, this is Keith. Good luck tonight.